This is the Blackout Defense Quantum DTL version 3. With the version 3.0, Blackout Defense has somehow figured out how to cram even more proprietary futuristic technology into their rifles, and they did it in a way that doesn't break the bank, especially when you compare it to other rifles in the same category. Guns like Daniel Defense, Geisley Super Duty, LWRC LMT, as well as Radian weapons. If those guns were supercars, they would be analogous to Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, McLaren, and things like that. Whereas this one, I would say, would be at the level of a Bugatti, but with Toyota reliability and without the Bugatti price tag. And you might be wondering now, why would I be comparing this to a Bugatti if it doesn't have a Bugatti price tag? That's because these rifles are bespoke. I know this is a very bold claim to make. However, I think it's important that you don't confuse my enthusiasm with being a paid shill. This is actually the third Blackout Defense review I've ever done, and they've never paid me for a single one of these videos. If this gun fails in any way in this video, I'm gonna tell you about it. You also shouldn't take this video as me telling you to go out and get one of these. I don't give a crap if you go out and buy one of these. Simply showing you something that I'm genuinely excited about because it punches way above its price point. Which reminds me, we will have a very special list available for everything that we're talking about in this video today. First link in the description. Check the pinned comment. What are the 5 things that this rifle can do that no other factory-built AR can do? And why does this one make other high-end ARs feel cheap by comparison? Well, in order to understand what those 5 things are, you first need to really understand who Blackout Defense is. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because I covered this in a previous review that I did on them. I'll put a link up here so you can see a more comprehensive video on that. But Blackout Defense is a small family-owned business. However, they are an aerospace company first that has government contracts with companies like Boeing and Raytheon. They've designed parts for intercontinental ballistic missiles and Apache helicopters and all kinds of other crazy stuff. The reason this is important is because they're an aerospace company first, they have some of the most advanced machinery that I've seen in almost any other gun company's shop. And they take all that knowledge that they've gained over the years of doing aerospace work and they apply it to the AR-15. In fact, since my last Blackout Defense video that I did in 2023, their rifles have actually been ordered and placed into service by various law enforcement agencies around the country and are currently being tested by various special operations units. And that brings us to Blackout Defense's design philosophy. You see, whenever you're choosing an AR, I'm sure you know as good as I do, that you got to define your purpose of what you want your AR to be really good at. And if I had to whittle it down, I'd say there's 3 main categories of ARs depending on your purpose. You have general purpose rifles. Then you have a marksman rifle, or in the case of a smaller caliber AR-15, an SPR. And then you have Gucci guns or competition 3-gun style rifles. Depending on what your purpose is, it's going to come with inherent sacrifices that need to be made. So for example, with a duty style rifle, you're going to get something that's super reliable, super tough, and can run through any condition almost, but it's going to be lacking in accuracy and all that other stuff. On the other side of that, you could get something that's built for long range and accurate, but then it's not going to be lightweight and easy to carry around. Then you can get something that's lightweight, easy to carry around, fast and flat, but then it's not going to be like really duty rated, and it's not going to be really good at precision accuracy. So there's always pros and cons. Now for context, the 4150 nitrided button rifled barrels are typically good for anywhere from 10 to 15,000 rounds, and then we have your cold hammer forged that are typically good from anywhere from about 20 to 25,000 rounds before needing a barrel replacement. Now, the thing is with these barrels, there is an inverse typically with accuracy. So the higher the barrel life, typically the lower the accuracy. The lower the barrel life, the higher the accuracy. This isn't set in stone because there's always exceptions to the rule. So the goal of Blackout Defense, at least for their 223 barrels, we'll go into more, they got other ones as well. We'll go into that later. Their goal is to build the ultimate general purpose rifle and take all the pros from each of those categories we just mentioned and try to eliminate as many sacrifices as possible. However, these do still make some sacrifices because there's no way around it, and we'll go into detail about those later on in the video. Now that we've gone over all that and you understand all that, let's get into the 5 things that these guns can do that other factory-built AR-15s can't. So the first problem that they wanted to solve was, how do we make a general purpose 13.9 to 16-inch barrel sub-MOA accurate without increasing increasing the weight of the rifle, without increasing barrel length, and without sacrificing a lot of barrel life. And the way they did that is with something called the DTL barrel system. We've gone into this in previous videos, but we do need to touch on it real quick. So to solve the accuracy problem, they had to really take a hard look at barrel material. And so they decided to use 416R stainless steel. Now, one of the problems with 416R stainless steel is they typically don't last more than 5,000 rounds before they need to be replaced because the sub-MOA accuracy starts opening up dramatically. But they didn't stop with just stainless steel barrels. They wanted to increase accuracy even more. And I've covered this in more detail in previous videos, but that secret lies in this right here called the DTL. This means dual taper lock. Essentially, it is a system of two different barrel nuts. You got this barrel nut on here that simply tightens down, and then you have this one here that secures it further. The reason that's important is because if you look at these barrels, they have I believe it's a 60-degree shoulder right here, and then they have another 60-degree shoulder right here. And the reason that they did that is if you look at your traditional mil-spec barrels, let me find a different one that's easier to see, you'll notice that these shoulders here have a 90-degree angle. And what Blackout Defense had noticed is when you torque down the barrel nut, you'll get what's called hot spots, or areas where the shoulder has more pressure than on the other. And if you dropped your rifle and hit the barrel, that hot spot point would shift to, say, the other side. And because of that, that would throw off your zero and affect accuracy. And so by adding 60-degree ramps and adding a second barrel nut, they were able to prevent that from happening. Because it's so concentric, I've even tested this with layout fluid before, where I put layout fluid on it, tightened down the barrel nut, took it off, there was not a single hot spot on this ramp. The other reason that they added the second barrel nut further out here is it's further stabilized the harmonics of the barrel and prevented barrel whip. That's also why you see all these weird concentric rings that run across here. They dissipate heat in a certain way, and then they also allow the harmonics of the barrel. I don't know how they do it. They have like $100,000 slow motion camera that they use to test everything and to make sure that their theories are actually practical. And by doing all of those things, they're able to make a 13.9-inch barrel sub-MOA accurate at 100 yards. Kind of crazy. Here's the interesting thing. Let's say you're like, all right, cool, man. What if I picked up one of their uppers or one of their guns and I shot out the barrel, and then years later, Blackout Defense is out of business? What about that? Well, the good news is this barrel nut, I'm not going to take it off to show you, but on the inside of this barrel nut, on one side, it has the barrel nut that fits 60-degree ramps. And then on the other side, it has the side that fits standard mil-spec barrels. Now, the interesting thing is this barrel nut, when you're using the DTL system, doesn't have to be timed. And that's important because that brings us to the handguard. So one of the features that all the duty rated rifles have in common is they have a very robust attachment methods for their handguards. And the only reason that they do that is because when the handguard is on the gun, they don't want it turning or moving in any way because they're going to put IR lasers on their handguards and they don't want them to lose zero. And so they have various methods of how they prevent rotation and movement and stuff like that. And Blackout Defense is very simple but effective. So their first secret is in these bolts that are right here in this nut. When you install this handguard and put this bolt and this nut through, you'll notice this nut has 4 spikes on each end. And so that spike, it's gonna bite into this handguard right here. And then on the other side, it's gonna bite into the barrel nut. That's why it's important that these barrel nuts, the primary one, doesn't have to be down to a certain torque setting, is because you could just simply put it at the same spot every time, and then that nut's gonna bite into the same place every single time. That's one way that they prevent rotation and movement. And the other way is with these high strength steel dowels right here. These are in here, and they simply insert into the upper receiver right there. And when you put it on, I'm not gonna put it back on because I need to show you something later, but when you put it on, it results in a very clean, tight lockup that doesn't move. Another thing that Blackout does to improve accuracy is all of their barrels are thermal fit into the upper, and that makes sure that the barrel won't move in and out or up and down, even microscopically. Now, what about barrel life. Because as I mentioned, you know, stainless steel barrels don't last very long. Both of these barrels are 416R stainless steel, but one of them looks black. So they have this one, which is a 416R stainless that is nitrided. And the nitriding impregnates into the metal, makes it a lot harder and makes it a lot more resistant to wear and tear, because even the rifling is nitrided as well. On the nitrided barrels, they guarantee 1.5 MOA or lower from about 0 to 12,000 rounds. It really depends on how you shoot your gun. If you're doing a ton of rapid fire, it wears out a ton faster, you know, than if you're doing a couple of shots here, a couple of shots there, and practicing with a purpose. After about 12,000 rounds, they said that the nitrided barrels will open up to about 3 MOA, and that will stay at 3 MOA until you get about 25,000 rounds, and then they recommend that you do a barrel replacement. Now, moving on to the next barrels. These are cryo-treated. And essentially what that is they take these from room temperature, and over the course of 72 hours, they take them down to negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit, and then they spend another 24 hours bringing them back to room temperature. These barrels here are more for your people that want even more accuracy. They're more accurate than the nitrided barrels. Although they have less life than their nitrided barrels, because of the cryo-treating, they still have more life than your typical stainless steel barrel. And this is what they told me. They said that these are 1.5 MOA or better up to 8,000 rounds. After 8,000 rounds, you'll get 2 MOA from about 8,000 rounds to 15,000 rounds. And after that, it's time for a barrel replacement. All of their barrels are a 1 in 8 twist rate, at least for 223, 5.56. I don't know about the 300 Blackout and the 6mm arc, but they come in a ton of different barrel lengths and they're working great. Now, there is some updates that they have done since my last video on their barrels. So in my last video, you could get these with you know, a regular standard gas block, or you could get them with like a Superlative Arms gas block. Well, something different they've done is they've made if you get the non-adjustable gas block, they've made it where it has no rotation. So for example, on most of your higher end guns, you're gonna get what's called a cross-pinned gas block. And essentially what they have to do is they have to drill a tiny little notch in the bottom of your barrel. And when they put the gas block on, put a pin through it, that gas block is not coming off, it's not moving, it's gonna be the most reliable thing you've ever had. The problem is, cross-pinning a barrel, it affects the accuracy of the barrel, it affects the harmonics of the barrel, and it affects how the barrel whips, because you're adding a weak spot into the barrel material. Some manufacturers, like I believe LWRC or LMT, I can't remember which, they do a thermal fit on their gas blocks. The problem with thermal fit is, yes, it solves the problem of the barrel harmonics, but now the end user of the gun can't do any maintenance on it. You have to send it in to the company. You know, if something happens with the gas tube or anything like that, you got to send it into them and have them fix it, because you can't take it off. So they solved both problems by simply adding a flat side on each side of the barrel. And what that does is, you can see how it looks right here. So now you have a gas block that is going to be perfectly aligned. It's not going to spin. And then you simply bolt it down into the dimple right there, use some rock set, and you also now have something that solves the problem that cross-pinning creates and solves the problem that thermal fit creates. Now, the good news is, let's say you had one of these and you got this flat shoulders and you're like, man, I hate that gas block, and Blackout Defense is out of business. Well, they've designed this so that standard gas blocks will still fit on here despite having flat sides. Well, because they were able to achieve sub-MOA accuracy without increasing the barrel length, without increasing the thickness or the barrel profile, and a reduced barrel whip without adding a thicker barrel profile, that keeps the barrel of at least the 13.9 inch that I have that's pin welded at an even 7 pounds without any attachments on it. And not only is it just 7 pounds, it's a very well-balanced 7 pounds. Now the question is, all right, cool, they put all this technology into this barrel system. Well, does it frickin' work? So back in March of 2024, I took this Blackout rifle that I've had for a couple of years, and I took a long-range course with my buddy Adrian from Sidewinder Concepts. Highly suggest you go check out his channel. It's just called Sidewinder Concepts, and get in touch with him. He is an amazing instructor. For reference, prior to taking his course, I rarely ever shot beyond 200 yards. That'd probably be my max. And I've never been a long-range shooter, and honestly, I like long range shooting, but it kind of bores me. Everybody told me that I would love it when I got into it. I like it, but I'm super ADD, so I really like fast, short range stuff. But nonetheless, I'm a total noob when it comes to long distance. So I took this one, which is a 13.9 inch pin welded, and this is the version 2.0 Blackout Defense rifle. This one has the cryo-treated barrel that we talked about earlier. After we went over a bunch of stuff about how to zero the gun, we made sure it was zeroed, and we got it all set up for the perfect eye level and all that other stuff. Within 20 minutes of me shooting, he had me hitting steel at 950 yards on a 13.9 inch barrel with a 20-mile-an-hour crosswind.
1.8.
Oh, hit with a 13.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
2.5.
Oh, impact. That's a solid fucking 15-mile-an-hour wind right there. Oh, 13.9 on a tripod.
Are you filming?
Hammered at 950.
Nice.
Oh my God.
But hold on, I gotta get we've got to get the wind in here so people can see like how much wind there is like on the trees and everything. So it's gusting at like at least 15 miles an hour right now.
Right.
Or 4.5 on this one. Impact.
Here it is.
Now, obviously, yeah, there were some misses. That crosswind was insane. And I was using some very good 75 grain because although Blackout Defense rifles do have a sub-MOA guarantee, they only guarantee it with specific weight, leave it 75 grain, and certain manufacturers as well, like Black Hills. That wasn't that I was using, but Black Hills is the one that they really endorsed to get their sub-MOA accuracy out of their guns. But the reason that that is important is, number one, the effective range of a 5.56 223 gun isn't 950 yards. Because at that distance, you're losing so much velocity that you're probably not gonna hurt much. But you really wouldn't wanna try to do that a lot. But on this one, not only is it possible, but we were doing it fairly consistently, depending on how the wind shifted. Now, the second thing that this gun can do that no other factory built AR-15 is something that's very, very new that nobody has talked about on YouTube yet. And that's gonna be a new duty rated, this isn't from Blackout Defense, I'm saying this, kind of a duty rated adjustable gas system. If you ever go and look at any of the big manufacturers that make duty rated general purpose rifles, you'll notice that none of them have adjustable gas blocks on them. And that's usually for good reason, because adjustable gas blocks aren't typically very reliable, and they can typically get carbon locked and seize up. They can get erosion and wear over time from all the carbon buildup, and they can typically get what they call a walking adjustment. And because of that, there hasn't been very many adjustable gas systems that are reliable, especially reliable enough for duty grade weapons. So this is probably the main event of this video, is this thing here called the Helix gas system. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest downsides to gas systems is they typically get seized up and get carbon lock, erosion and wear, all that crazy stuff. So how do you avoid all of those downfalls that typically adjustable gas systems have? I know you're gonna look at this and you're gonna be like, that looks like rifle speed. We'll talk about the differences between rifle speed in a second. Number one way that they do this is they keep the adjustment separated from the gas block itself. They're not touching in any way. One way that they prevent carbon lock is all you gotta do is do a one click in or one click out, and it moves this rod in and out, and that will break any carbon lock. However, that's not the only thing they did. The gas block here is made of a M42 cobalt steel designed to withstand over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And here in a minute, I want you to know we did a full auto burn down on this, and we're gonna go over that here in a second. This little plunger right here, this is the only part of the gas system that is gonna have any erosion or wear, and it's a very easy to replace item. And it's actually, you can order these from McMaster, and it has a national stock number. So even if Blackout Defense goes out of business, you can still get replacement rods for your gas system. And the way it works, it's simple. Let's just show you real quick. You turn right, it closes off the gas system. You turn left, it opens up the gas system. On here, you have 24 effective gas adjustments. I believe they are about 8 thousandths of an inch per click. And you actually have a handguard marking. So when this is installed, when you close it all the way and you back it out until this marking here is in alignment with this marking on the handguard, you are at a fully closed position. And that is just a good indicator to be like, oh, okay. And then it tells you on the handguard, you go in this direction to add gas, you go in this direction to decrease gas. The other interesting thing is, because you can fully close this, if you wanted to shoot this like a bolt action, for example, let's say you're trying to hit a target that's super far away and you don't want the bolt reciprocating, simply close it off and shoot it and you'll be able to do it. So you're probably wondering at this point, all right, how is this different than rifle speed? Well, the biggest reason this is different than rifle speed is this is proprietary to this barrel. Look at those threads. Look how fine those threads are. So this piece here actually threads on. Most of the parts are actually, they can be nitrided or you can have them Cerakoted. They sent me a nitrided one. On the front of this piece here, it's actually set in place with a snap ring right here. And then you have a spring in between here. See how that can come off very easily? This spring is made out of a 17.5 high temp steel that can withstand temperatures up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's 7 layers thick. The reason I bring that up is if you look at the rifle speed spring, it's a single layer, or I think maybe 2 layers, and they're not made of the same materials. The other difference I would say with rifle speed 2 is their plungers right here. They're made out of a steel that cost about 25 cents a piece. This little rod here costs $9. Also, this system is using that same flattened shoulder that you saw earlier on the other gas block. So this gas block is not moving. The other interesting thing is, if you look at the bottom side of the adjuster right here, you'll notice a hole there where a screw can go in. One of the things that I mentioned earlier that adjustable gas blocks suffer from is walking. And walking can either be, the gas adjustment thing moving, or sometimes it can occur, with erosion. But in order to prevent mechanical movement, there is a set screw that comes with it, and you can lock it down at your desired setting, and then you don't got to worry about it moving when you're tossing the gun around and taking it back and forth to the range. So one of the questions that I had for Blackout Defense was, okay, how do you maintain this? And what if you have a pin welded muzzle device? The only thing that needs to be serviced on here is over time, I don't know how long, but this rod will wear out. And as I mentioned, it's a McMaster national stock number. You can get that number from Blackout Defense in case they ever went out of business, but Blackout Defense will carry these as well. So this is gonna have some thread locker on it. So you're just gonna hit that with a torch. And if you had a pin welded barrel, you obviously can't take your muzzle device off. Well, in that case, you hit that with a torch, and that's gonna bring out that little set screw there. And then if you turn your adjustment knob to a certain area, that there's a little groove right there. And that groove will allow you to pull this out right here. And then you simply replace it with the new one. Another thing you wanna notice here, I don't know how well we can see this, it's so small. This dowel piece is actually notched right here. So when you go to put this back in, it actually faces where the set screw is, because the set screw has a point on the end of it. And that set screw bites into that knot, and then you put a little bit more, I don't know what they're using, I think it's rock set. And then that allows you to go back to town. So that right there is actually something that's very different from rifle speed. I believe on rifle speeds, if I'm wrong, someone correct me down in the comments, because this is what I was told by somebody. On rifle speed, in order to change out this rod, the adjustment rod, you have to remove your muzzle device. On this one, you simply don't. Now, the only other concern that I had about this was, number one, yes, I can see that we can change out this rod over time, with a pin welded muzzle device, but what if the spring wears out? Because this spring is only rated up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit before it fails. Because if you want to change that spring, you do have to take off the muzzle device. Now, another difference you're going to notice here with the adjustable gas system, we now have a straight gas tube. Previously, we had a traditional bent gas tube. And one of the biggest differences between these two, and a lot of companies are starting to go to this straightened design, is this little bend right here. This is typically where gas tubes fail. Now, Some people say that the reason there's a bend there is because you want the gas tube to fail so your barrel doesn't fail. So it's kind of like a safeguard for it. I will say though, on Golden Webb YouTube channel, he's had a lot of guns where the barrels failed before the gas tube, but that's neither here nor there. But the straight gas tube, this is something that's similar to, I think LWRC or LMT does something like this, where it's completely straight and you eliminate the bend there. Not only is your gassing more reliable and there's better flow, but also you don't get that hot spot, so you don't blow up your gas block. Also, the other benefit to a straight gas tube is the way that this is designed. This gas block's obviously a little bit taller than typical. However, you can actually, if you ever had a problem with your gas tube, you can change the gas tube without removing any of the gas system parts or the muzzle device. You can see it right here in the front. It could be replaceable and you don't got to take anything apart. So he's kind of designed this system in a way to be very serviceable, but at the same time not limiting you. How does this thing hold up? Could it possibly be duty rated in the future? And how much does this freaking contraption cost? And so earlier in this video, you've heard me throw around the term duty rated. As I mentioned, that's not from Blackout Defense. That's kind of just from me. And the reason that I say that is we did a test on this gas system, and I'm not gonna post up all the footage here, but essentially they invited Mike from Tactical Consideration, some of the guys from the DC Predator channel, and myself out to the range. And what we did was we put 1,500 rounds consecutively through the new Helix gas system. It was a shorter barrel similar to this one. And throughout that test, we had 0 failures. Now, with that said, we did have a couple of stoppages here and there because we were shooting some with a can on and some with the can off. Sometimes when we'd throw a can on, it'd be a little overgassed or undergassed, kind of depending on the adjustment. And so when we'd start shooting, it would get a stoppage and then we adjust the gas and it'd be fine. But we got this rifle and this gas system up to 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, the barrel got so hot that the stainless steel turned purple. Typically, you only see that on titanium. Now, if you remember from earlier, where we were talking about the different temperatures that these different types of metals can withstand, you'll remember that the gas block spring can handle anywhere from 900 to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit before it loses its springiness. But we got it up to 1,300 degrees, and that particular spring didn't fail. That's not to say that they all won't, but that particular one didn't fail. It maintained its springiness. And because they're using cobalt steel for the gas block, we didn't get any carbon lock either. Now, the fourth thing that this gun can do that no other factory built AR-15 can do is it's bespoke. You heard me mention that earlier. And what that means is you can almost configure this rifle to your exact desire, similar to that of the Bugattis. You know, when you order a Bugatti, you can change every single aspect of that car. It could be a color that they don't offer or a leather material that they don't offer, and they will do it for you. And that's kind of how Blackout Defense is. As of the date of recording this video, they offer 3 calibers. They got 223 Wild, which also shoots 5.56, 300 Blackout, and 6mm ARC. And they have varying barrel lengths from anywhere from 11.5 inches all the way up to 18 inches, depending on which caliber you choose. And then if you chose like the 12.5 inch, for example, they also have varying gas lengths. So they have one that's a carbine length, and then they have one that's called an interpose, which is a carbine +1. It's a little softer shooting than carbine length, and it allows more dwell time than mid-length. They have multiple options for their triggers. Now, I know I haven't mentioned it in this video, but these triggers are to die for. Literally, the only other trigger that I like as much as this is the Geissele SD3G trigger. And this one, actually, I like it a little bit better. But with their triggers, they do have different trigger shoes and different trigger weights. So they got 3 pound, they got 4.5 pound, and then they have 2 or 3 different style of trigger shoes that you can choose from. The only thing they don't offer is a double stage trigger. Every trigger is a single stage trigger. They have an ambidextrous mag release, and in addition to that, you could change the color of that mag release if you want. The charging handle on it is not only ambidextrous, but it's very robust. If you look at this footage right here, on one side, I have the Blackout Defense. On the other side, I have the charging handle that came with my LMT Mars rifle. You can see the difference already in how big the pins are for the charging latches. And these aren't just pins. These, I believe, are threaded screws. If I'm wrong about that, I'm sure Blackout Defense can correct me in the comments. You can get the wings of this in two different sizes. You can get them like in a small or a larger size, and you can get the wings of this colored in any of the colors that they offer. It's also gas redirecting. If you look at the bottom side of this charging handle, you'll see a little path where gas can escape out the side instead of blasting you in the face. Now the bolt catch, bolt release can also be configured in a different color. Now something we should note is this is ambidextrous bolt release, but it's not ambidextrous bolt lock. You can configure their uppers now with a forward assist. The last time we did the review, they were not offering forward assist on their uppers, but because people asked for it, they simply obliged. Now, with their muzzle devices, they have tons of choices. I'm not even gonna go through the gambit. They got Surefire, quick detach on them. They got Huxworks, quick detach. They got Chemo. Not only do they have a ton of options for the muzzle devices, but if you are getting like a pin welded version, or if you're not, and you just don't know how to install it, you can send in your own muzzle device and get that one pin welded on there. He's even told me that people have sent in their own butt stocks because they didn't want one of the ones that they offered, but they wanted it Cerakoted in a specific color, and they did that for them. Speaking of butt stocks, you can choose between the Magpul SLs or the B5 system SOP mod stocks. For the braces, you can get something like this, which is an SBA4. You can get the SB Tactical PDW, or you can get the SB Tactical Honey Badger style PDW brace as well. For the grips, you can get either the Magpul K2 or you can get the B5 Systems P23 grip, and it does include the grip plug for the battery compartment. There's actually a lot more, but those are just some of the things that they offer to give you a more bespoke experience on your ordering process. In fact, there might be some that exist that I haven't heard of, and if there is, let me know in the comments, but I haven't seen another AR manufacturer offer a drop-down menu list to customize your rifle however you want it. Now let's get to pricing. And this is gonna be important because you wanna pay attention if you don't wanna pay full price for certain things. So, how much are these things? And after what I've told you in this video, I'd like you to think of a number of what you think that these cost, based on all the features that are offered with them. These start at $2,100, and depending on how you configure this, the price can go up. Quite a bit, actually. And actually, one of the things that adds the most to the price is doing custom colors on everything on the gun. And because of the amount of bespoke customization you can do on this, it's super easy to add over $400 worth of color options. So the cheapest way to do this is to simply go all black and either get a 14.5 inch or a 16-inch barrel with the Helix gas system. The Helix gas system itself is a $200 upgrade, and to put that into perspective, that's $150 cheaper than the Daniel Defense M4A1 Ris 3, $1,000 cheaper than the Radian Model 1, and $400 cheaper than the LMT Mars 556 DI gun. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but you get the idea. But there's only limited quantities, and it only lasts for 90 days from the date I post this video. Now, you might be wondering, hey man, I don't really want the whole gun. Well, good news is they do have complete uppers that offer the Helix gas system. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, all right, man, I already own a Blackout Defense gun. How am I gonna do that? Well, good news is they're gonna offer a barrel and gas system upgrade. Now, let's talk about some cons or some downsides or things that I feel like Blackout Defense could do better. Because I'll be honest, it was very difficult for me to find cons about this gun. However, everything can be improved upon no matter how good it is. Their current lead times are 6 or 7 months, depending. And honestly, like for a bespoke anything, that's actually a really good lead time. The next downside, I would say, and this isn't really a downside, but I do feel like they could do a lot more with their bolt carrier groups. Now, their bolt carrier groups are nitrited, Carpenter 158 steel, and they are magnetic particle inspected. However, you know, of the other companies that we talked about earlier in this video, like Daniel Defense and all of them, they do a lot of over-engineering on their bolt carrier groups so that they last even longer. Another area I think they can improve upon is, although they have a ton of muzzle device options, if you spec it with the 13.9 inch barrel, it reduces the number of options for muzzle devices because the barrel needs to reach 16 inches with a pin weld. With all of that said, at the $2,100 to $2,400 price point, you'd be very hard pressed to find another rifle that can do all the things that this rifle can do while maintaining the reliability, the durability, the gas adjustability, and the insane accuracy that this gun has for the same price. If you can name one that's factory built that you didn't build yourself, let me know down in the comments. Now, here's the thing. If this gun is beyond your price point, and you're like, I understand it's great quality and stuff, but this is just way beyond my pricing category, go check out this video right here where I go over 5 of my favorite ARs that are under 10 Benjamin Franklins, and I go into a lot of detail about it. But until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.